All right, good afternoon. Hopefully you can all hear me and see me because I'm having some problems logging on my laptop. If you can hear me, just wave or turn on your video so I can see you. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Okay, there we go. There we go. Oh, and excellent, excellent. All right. Happy Monday. As soon as I'm done here and you're done with me, we will be joined by Amina Mohammed, our Deputy Secretary General. She will be here to give you a preview of tomorrow's high-level meeting with heads of states and government on financing for the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda in the era of COVID-19. That meeting is being co-chaired by the Secretary General and the Prime Ministers of Jamaica and Canada. She will also talk to you about the ACT Accelerator COVAX facility event, which will take place on Wednesday. And that meeting is being co-organized by the Secretary General, the Director General of WHO, and the governments of South Africa and the United Kingdom. And I also just want to give you a heads up that tomorrow at 11:30, the Secretary General will be here to brief you along with the Prime Ministers of Jamaica and Canada. And that will be almost at the end of the Financing for Development event. For those of you in the building, the Secretary General will be here in the press briefing room, and the Prime Ministers will join by WebEx. Then at 12:30 tomorrow, there'll be a briefing by Inger Anderson, the Executive Director of UNEP, along with Elizabeth Mrema, the Executive Secretary on the Convention of Biological Diversity, Achim Steiner, the administrator of the UN Development Program. They will be here to brief you on the UN Summit on Biodiversity, which begins on September 30th. And I also want to, excuse me, today's Monday, and I'm definitely in my Monday confused stage. Also wanted to confirm to you that we did issue a statement yesterday in which on the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh, in which the Secretary General said he was extremely concerned over the fresh resumption of hostilities along the lines of contact in the Nagorno-Karabakh Conflict Zone. He condemned the use of force and regretted the loss of life and the toll on the civilian population. The Secretary General strongly called on all the sides to immediately stop fighting, de-escalate tension, and return to meaningful negotiations without preconditions or delay. He reiterated his full support for the important role of the OSCE Minsk Group Co-Chairs and urged the sides to work closely with them for an urgent resumption of dialogue without precondition. The Secretary General just advised me that he just spoke to the President of Azerbaijan, and he will be speaking very shortly with the Prime Minister of Armenia. And he delivered in his phone conversation the same message which he had in the statement to the President of Azerbaijan, meaning a need for an immediate stop to the fighting, a resumption without precondition for meaningful negotiations without delay under the umbrella of the Minsk Group Co-Chairs, and also for the immediate redeployment of OSCE monitors to the region. And he will say exactly the same thing to the Prime Minister of Armenia. Turning to Syria, I can tell you that we remain very concerned about the spread of COVID-19 cases across Syria, considering the low level of testing and tracing masks the real scope of the pandemic. To date, the Syrian Ministry of Health has confirmed 4,072 cases, including 192 deaths. In the northeast, the number of confirmed cases continues to rise, with the last report 2 days ago identifying 1,464 confirmed cases, including 63 deaths. Some 825 lab-confirmed COVID-19 cases have also been reported in northwest Syria, including 6 deaths. As noted by the Emergency Relief Coordinator, Mark Lowcock, in his latest Security Council briefing, it would only be possible to get a clear picture of the situation once testing was stepped up. Infection rates among health workers are also concerning throughout the country, including in the Northwest, where some 1/3 of all confirmed cases are health workers. WHO continues to lead efforts to support increased distribution of personal protective equipment where needed and to ensure the protection of healthcare workers as well as training their use. WHO is leading UN preparedness and mitigation measures across Syria, including in the northwest and in the northeast. And in a statement we issued yesterday on Yemen, the Secretary General welcomed the agreement between the parties to the Yemen conflict to release immediately 1,081 individuals who'd been detained in connection with the conflict. Mr. Guterres urged the parties to build on this momentum and finalize arrangements for the release of all remaining detainees. He's also grateful to the International Committee of the Red Cross for its tireless efforts as co-chair of the Supervisory Committee to ensure the implementation of prisoner release agreement brokered, as you will recall, in Sweden in 2018, as well to the government of Switzerland for hosting the parties over the past week. He calls on the parties to engage with Martin Griffiths, his special envoy, to agree on a joint declaration encompassing a nationwide ceasefire, economic humanitarian measures, and the resumption of a comprehensive and inclusive political process to end the war. And Mr. Griffiths also added that for himself that the prisoner release will indicate that when the parties show good faith and willingness to compromise, peaceful negotiations can succeed. He called on the parties to build on this very important achievement and to move together towards a negotiated solution, bringing lasting peace to Yemen. And in a video message today addressed by the Secretary General to leaders who took part in the virtual Pledge for Nature, he said that planetary emergency is among us, driven by dual threats to the climate crisis and biodiversity collapse. The Secretary General added that we have failed to meet any of the biodiversity targets that were set in Japan 10 years ago and called on countries to raise our ambition in the vital months between this week's Biodiversity Summit and the Biodiversity COP15 next May in Kunming, China. The Secretary General also commended governments for participating today on the Leaders' Pledge for Nature, which calls for 30% of land and marine resources to be protected by 2030. Turning to Lebanon, following a request from the Lebanese Armed Forces, the UN peacekeepers in Lebanon today deployed a detachment of forces to Beirut to assist Lebanese authorities with their efforts to deal with the aftermath of the tragic August 4th explosions. The deployment early this morning follows the authorization by the Security Council for the mission to take, quote, temporary and special measures, end quote, to provide support to Lebanon and its people in the aftermath of the explosion. UNIFIL peacekeepers deployed to the Lebanese capital with heavy machinery and other equipment. The assistance, which will be executed in 3 phases in about 3 weeks, is operating at the port as well as the city center with an engineering-centered task force. The main areas of support will be clearing of debris, construction work, in order to facilitate the rapid resumption of operations of Beirut Harbor. And today in Hurghada in Egypt, military and police teams from eastern and western Libya met and began security and military talks in the framework of the ongoing 5+5 Joint Military Commission talks with the facilitation of the UN support mission for Libya. The UN mission expects the outcome of these face-to-face meetings will be mainstreamed into the 5+5 Joint Military Commission. And turning to Côte d'Ivoire, at the end of a pre-electoral mission to Côte d'Ivoire, the head of the UN Office for West Africa and the Sahel, Mohamed M. Chambas, reiterated his call on all political actors to maintain their commitment to the organization of a peaceful and inclusive election in full respect for human rights. The objective was to renew the UN support for the organization of the country's presidential election scheduled for October 31st and encouraged all those involved to work together in favor of peace and stability. And his full statement's been made available to you. A quick update from Zimbabwe, where our colleagues there are working to help address the COVID-19 pandemic. The team, led by resident coordinator Maria Ribeiro, is supporting the new national strategy to recover better from COVID-19 in the Sustainable Development Goals. This plan targets 5.6 million people. The UNESCO and UN Children's Fund, UNICEF, are helping some 4.5 million students with remote learning and how to open schools safely. The project's World Health Organization and the UN Project Services Agency this month helped more than 20,000 people in communities impacted by Cyclone Idai, And for its part, the World Food Program reached more than 320,000 people across 22 districts in September. In rural communities, the UN Development Program is supporting 840,000 farmers, while UNAIDS continues to provide free antiretroviral therapy to more than 1 million people living with HIV. The International Organization for Migration has helped some 20,000 migrants return to Zimbabwe, while UNFPA helped more than 3,000 survivors of gender-based violence this month. And new data released today by UN Women and the UN Development Program shows that most countries are not doing enough to protect women and girls from economic and social fallout caused by the COVID-19 crisis. The agencies found that 42 countries, or 1/5 of those analyzed, have no gender-sensitive measures in response to COVID-19. Only 25 countries, or 12% of the world, have introduced measures that address violence against women and girls, support unpaid care of children and the sick, and strengthening women's economic security. The executive director of UN Women, Phumzile Mlapo Nguka, said that it is clear that the COVID-19 pandemic is hitting women hard. And Achim Steiner, the head of UNDP, said the crisis provides an opportunity for countries to transform existing economic models towards a renewed social contract that prioritizes social justice and gender equality. More information on the web. Today is the first International Day for Universal Access to Information, and this year the day focuses on the right to information in times of crisis. To mark the day, this morning, the UN Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, held a virtual high-level event entitled Access to Information, Saving Lives, Building Trust, Bringing Hope. The event examined issues affecting access to information in times of crisis, as well as constitutional, statutory, and policy guarantees for public access to information during and beyond COVID-19. And today we say thank you very much to our friends in Trinidad and Tobago for their full payment to the regular budget of 2020. So far, 122 member states have paid in full. And I will stop here. I'm having trouble logging in, so we'll go to the room first, because that I can see, and then we'll go to the web. Go ahead.
Thank you, Stéphane. Ray Boucha from Sky News Arabia. I'm going to talk about part in the world are northern Syria, part of Iraq, Libya, Cyprus, Greece, Eastern Mediterranean, and now the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Don't you think, as United Nations, that President Erdogan of Turkey is creating chaos everywhere in the world? I mean, all these countries are complaining against him. I mean, any comment on that?
Look, you're linking situations that may or may not be linked to each other. What we call for is international cooperation around established talks that are already in place for certain countries. There are different formulas, whether it's in Syria or in Libya, it's around UN-led talks. In Azerbaijan and in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict area, it's with the OSCE in the lead. So I will leave the analysis to the analysts. Okay. Abdelhamid, sorry.
I'm really sorry.
That's okay.
The way Turkey is moving foreign fighters to Libya is the same way they are moving it in Azerbaijan.
Look, I'm not going to comment further than what I've already said. Abdelhamid, I see you waving.
Yes, thank you, Stéphane. I am referring to the statement issued by the Secretary General on Armenia, Azerbaijan. And the statement failed to mention a reference to the Security Council resolution. I want to remind you that UN adopted 4 resolutions in 1993, 822, 853, 874, and 884. And the last one, 884, on 12 November 1993, it specifically asked Armenia to withdraw from occupied land it took over from Azerbaijan. I mean, he's calling for negotiations, but he didn't mention in the framework of UN Security Council resolutions. Why is that?
Look, our work is clearly guided by the relevant Security Council resolutions. That's a matter of principle. That's where the Secretariat gets its instructions from, whether it's Security Council or the General Assembly. For the Secretary General, at this point, because we're not talking about we're talking about a conflict, an exchange of fire that is ongoing, and it's an appeal for a ceasefire, for meaningful dialogue to resume without preconditions and without delay, and along the Minsk format, and also Minsk co-chairs, and a resumption of OSCE monitors on the ground.
Can I just follow up?
Yes, of course.
The Minsk Group opposed the conflict, did not settle the conflict. And calling back on Minsk Group, which they didn't do anything since 1993, and there were skirmishes many times during the last 27 years. So why the Secretary General didn't go straight forward to the issue that is a land occupied by Armenia? It belongs to Azerbaijan.
No, I mean, the relevant UN resolutions stand, and they're critical. At this point, there is a process led by a regional organization, the OSCE, and we feel that the parties should support it. You know, this goes, really refers, I can refer you back to what the Secretary General said, not only in the General Assembly speech, but in other places, this need for networked multilateralism, for also the importance of regional peace and security organizations, whether it's the OSCE, whether it's the AU, whether it's ECOWAS. So I think it's very important, and that's his message to the parties, to rejoin and support the OSCE mechanism. Okay, wave your hands in the air if you have a question. Yes, like you just don't care. Go ahead, Toby. Go ahead, Toby.
Thanks very much. I apologize. This is probably a remedial question for people who are more familiar with the high-level week than I am. But so the PGA received a right of reply from China, but because it was to a head of state, because it was from the mission level, it means it can only be circulated as a UN document and not verbally read. Is that correct? I'm just trying to understand what is different about the virtual setting this year. Thank you.
Toby, you and me both. I need to figure that out.
Okay.
Okay. Alan, I think that's you.
Yeah, correct. I'm sorry, can you hear me? Oh, I'm
yes,
sorry.
I can hear you.
Yeah, I have a follow-up on the Armenia and Azerbaijan conflict. Several parties, including Armenian side, some parties from the Syria claim that Turkey is sending the mercenaries to the conflict zone. Does the SG have any comment regarding this?
We have no information to the veracity of this claim or many other claims that are being made. We have no way to check them. And then we've seen in press reports different claims made by different parties. One of the important things is to get OSCE monitors back on the ground. Okay, any more question? All right, I will ask you please to be patient. We'll have the Deputy Secretary General with us in just a few minutes. Let me go get her. If you can stay connected. Thank you.